I wanted to jump on here to talk about Kate Spade, and and some of the stuff that I saw going on with regards to her um, unfortunate death, suicide. And today I had a speaking engagement. What's going on, Ken? Good to see you, brother. I had a speaking engagement today at UNC Charlotte, and I talked to some of the those graduate students about the idea of addressing mental health issues all across the board, whether you live in a suburban area or in the underserved areas. There's mental health issues taking place all around, and I talked about the disparities or how people in the more affluent areas have the money to spend to cover up the challenges that exist in their community, whereas people in the underserved communities just get butchered and exposed by the media. In those sedity areas, or those uppity areas, or the areas that have the most influence, people can pay to keep their stories out of the news, or because they know a contact, they know people at the news station, they know a senator, they know a politician of some sort who can interfere with law enforcement officers doing their job to make sure that this report doesn't make it to the Monday morning roundup, when typically when reporters come and find out what's been going on in the city each morning, or every week. And so it's this idea here that as I expressed to the students at the school, that the narratives that we've been conditioned to follow places pressure on each and every one of us to fit into a particular box. Now, when I say each and every one of us, I'm talking about people specifically who are not conscious enough, or who don't realize, or are not self-aware enough to realize that you can create your own box. You don't have to fit into any particular box that's already pre-made or prefabricated for you to come in and jump on in it, right? And I was talking about how young black males, because it was a class on how to work with teenagers and adolescents, and what are the best methods and strategies to help reach them. I talked about how they're conditioned by what the media shows of people who look like them. And I said, white America is also conditioned by the standard or expectation that they have to live up to, this standard of whatever whiteness is, the American way or the American dream, having to live up to these things. And if they fall short of that, then there are psychological problems that come with that, depression and low self-worth and all these other things. And I also talked about the idea of values, how our values create the conditions where we run into challenges where our values may be inconsistent in helping us get through these challenges, yet we stick to them anyway because it's all we know, and then we stay stuck. It's like a car traveling in mud, if you will. You're just going to spin tires and waste a lot of energy, get exhausted very fast, and create a plethora of psychological challenges for yourself. And I touched on so many different things there today. I talked about my book, but I wanted to drive home to these folks that we all have baggage and stuff. It's either going to be categorized as manageable or unmanageable. And sometimes I remember when I played football, there were certain injuries that I used to suffer. I continue to play. I could play through it. And we walk through life with injuries, significant to not so bad injuries that we don't get addressed. And it complicates our ability to grow. And you're only going to go as far as your fear allows you. You're only going to go as far as you give yourself permission to go. And when people get into a rut or a space where they feel like they need to take their own lives or kill other people, because even though this Kate Spade may have committed suicide or taken her own life, some people get all bent out of shape when I say committed suicide or successfully committed suicide. People get bent out of shape about the jargon, but she took her own life. In some of these underserved neighborhoods, it's young men and young women are persevering through so much pain and emotional pain that they don't mind dying either. And they put themselves in predicaments, high risk predicaments, to get their lives taken as well. And it's a form of suicide, whether it's a slow suicide death of abusing drugs and alcohol with this expectation that maybe I could drink this pain away, or maybe I could smoke or use these drugs to take the pain away. It's all suicidal. It's all feeding into the aspect of committing suicide. And so what do we do with this stuff? How do we fix this? How do we reach people and let them know, yo, listen, you can go get help. You don't have to be ashamed of whatever the challenges are, whatever the issues are. Media, celebrities, people with influence, people who are courageous enough to talk about their own issues, I think can help change the perception of mental health, or being able to obtain the assistance for it. A lady in class asked me, so what are police officers supposed to do whenever they express that they're having, if they express that they're having challenges with mental health issues, if they express that, won't it compromise their job, or won't it come back in the case if they get caught up in some type of use of force situation, that won't an attorney subpoena that and eat that up and use that against the officer? Yeah, you're absolutely right, they will. So this is why I propose, and I wrote about it in my book, and I have a self-help workbook that I also market to officers, that if you mandate all officers from their training throughout their career and even in their retirement to take counseling, or mandate counseling to be a complement to the training program, we won't know who's got problems, but because you're steadily providing the information and the resources, so whether they need it or not, they've got access to it because it's mandated. And I believe that's the way you address the stigma, by making it something that's mandatory. Yeah, it's going to piss off a lot of officers in the beginning because, hey, I want to be mentally tough. I don't need counseling. I'm in denial. Whoop-de-woo, whoop-de-woo. I got these personality disorders and I'm hiding behind the badge. And I'm not saying that all officers are dealing with that type of psychological dysfunction, but it does exist in the profession. And I'm talking about reaching the officers that are suffering in silence before they become a liability, not only for the agency, but also for the community and themselves. Those are the officers that I'm talking about. And even if the officer doesn't have psychological challenges, there's a ton of benefits that they can gain from engaging in a clinical relationship with a counselor, whether it's direction about their future and their goals and professional development, or just personal goals and development. There's always something to be gained from that relationship. So I think if people give themselves permission to try, it's a win-win situation. Not only for the police officers, for the agency, and for the city as well. But I'm delusional. And guess what? Let me tell you what I've been running into, y'all. I've been running into people that would like to discredit my credibility, right? I'm not the guy. I only have 8 years in law enforcement. I'm not the guy who's been in law enforcement for 69 years and I've got this credential, I got this FBI certificate, I've done this and I've done that, and I'm the subject matter expert on yada 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 yada. This long portfolio, this long vita, and so I don't have that, right? But what I do have, here's my finger. What I do have, I know what it's like to go through lawsuits. And I also know what it's like to go through a 4-day trial facing 2 indictments behind using excessive force. I know what that feels like. I know what it's like to sit behind a jail cell for a number of hours. My first appearance, being a police officer, a dedicated cop, one who was very interested in making a difference in the community, and having to live through that. I know what it's like to be unemployable for 2 years, a stay-at-home dad for 2 years. Because I'm either overqualified or because this investigation is going on, I'm not hireable. I'm too much of a risk or overqualified. So I've got experiences. That's what makes me credible, because I've been there. I've been through the things that I'm trying to help other officers avoid. And then you add my mental health experience to that. You add my professional and personal experiences to that I talk about in my book. Yeah, I can help officers identify how to manage their careers effectively. You damn Skippy. But let me tell you why I conflict or I become someone that's risky, because I speak a narrative that's associated with honesty and truth, and not the political correct jargon that they use commonly to talk about or to conceal the issues that exist in the profession. So the officers who are struggling in silence don't feel safe to talk about the issues when their administrators are dismissing that issues exist, all for the sake of perception, favorable public perception. That's another thing I talked about in the class today too, the idea that a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And because many officers are too afraid to talk about the mental health issues that they may be contending with, or the challenges from the job, or the burnout that they're dealing with in the job, and the politics that are involved in policing, that complicate the morale of the job, there's fear to even address that because they may suffer backlash if they do. I mean, we're talking about suicide rates out the wazoo in law enforcement. We're talking about divorce rate. We're talking about high domestic violence. We're talking about high alcoholism, a lot of heart attacks, cardiac disease within the profession. And you're going to tell me that, yo, they don't need help? And so I'm all about, eliminating the fluff, man, and getting to the root of the matter. I wrote earlier in somebody else's post, I can't remember, I wrote where it was, I can't remember where it was, but I wrote, you can't call HIV a head cold. You can't dismiss it. You can't play it like that, because then you're not going to get the proper response or the proper treatment for whatever the condition is. And that's the political correctness. Oh, it's just a head cold. There's a difference. And the unfortunate thing is that the public doesn't understand the training, the policies, and the law that goes into creating an officer, or that goes into preparing officers to do the job. So therefore, the communication or the understanding is murky. It's muddy. It's not. How would I say? The public doesn't get a full picture of how officers are trained to do the job, and that's where the confusion comes in. And it's so easy to smoke screen stuff because, again, there's the information is not shared in a way that educates people on how things should be done. So you got a lot of hypotheticals. Oh, officers should be able to do this. Why do they have to do that? Again, it's according to their training. And so why are officers getting off in many of these cases where they're using force or shooting people and all this other jazz? Is because they are following their training, policy, and the law. Yeah. And a lot of the students brought up a lot of the cases, like Philando Castile, the gentleman that got shot when he told the officer, hey, I got a gun, and he started reaching. Yeah, that officer behaved according to his training. The gentleman in New York, Eric Garner, who was choked out by an illegal chokehold. And again, I can't justify how officers look at the scene or how they do what they do, but I can tell you that if an officer articulates according to his policy, his training, and the law, why he did what he did, and he made the jury believe that he was reasonably in fear of his life, or he reasonably believed that he needed to use force to the degree that he used it, with a measure of integrity to his role as a police officer to execute whatever arrest or whatever, eliminate whatever threat, he's going to be found, they're going to be found not guilty. That's just how it works. And many people don't rest well with that, but no, that's how it works. And so, it's always going to be up to that officer's discretion and their ability to articulate why they did what they did. So mental health is real. I said all that to say mental health is real. And if any one of you, as my friends, are going through a challenge, understand that you can get help. call me. That's cool. We'll talk. I won't even charge you. We'll just talk in politics, and I'll walk you through it. But I would encourage you to find a clinician, a psychologist, someone who can help direct you towards the resource, someone you can trust to talk about the problems that you're having, because it doesn't have to end with you taking your life or somebody else's life. Talk it out. You'll feel much better. The other day I asked about, hey, if anybody knew where to buy some utility carts, right? And I had a couple people jump on and in the thread and respond, hey, this is where you can go. Go to this place. Try this particular resource. No one would have. I would have never received that help if I didn't ask for it. Wow. And as a result, now I know where to go and buy one of these carts. A closed mouth doesn't get fed, y'all. It's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. It's just unfortunate, man, to see people take their lives in predicaments that, you know, probably could have been avoided, you know. But again, the shame, our commitment to these value systems, our commitment to these unrealistic, at times, unrealistic expectations that others have of us, our subscription to these societal narratives. This is the stuff, man, that puts us in a predicament to feel like there's no hope when there is. There's a ton of hope, you know. Appreciate y'all, man. Anybody, I mean, I'm open to anybody's thoughts, perspectives about some of the stuff that I just talked about relative to law enforcement training and some of the challenges that are existing in our society with regards to mental health and people not getting the help that they need. What are some of y'all thoughts about the things that are going on in our society? We got to have a conversation about it, y'all. We should have a conversation about it. Definitely want to just, again, mental health is a real thing. And if you're a parent, I made a video about this a couple weeks ago. If you're a parent, I encourage you to, again, allow your child to make decisions. If you got to control the decision, I would encourage you to give them options of the decision you desire for them to make. And between two choices that you desire them to make, let them make the choice, though, which direction they're going. Children are deprived of power and control. They're at the mercy of parental power. And, you know, that was another question that came up today when I was talking to the group of graduate students, was how to work with youth, right? And the idea that most children are not going to say, hey, I want to go to counseling. They're typically they're mandated to come by the courts, by their parents. And so you're an extension. You're the ones that the parents or the court selected to now put them through this process. So you're like a part of the problem too, as a clinician. And one of the things I learned from working with youth is that I want to see what they see. I want to understand what they understand in order to, in fact, meet them where they're at and help them look at their circumstance from another perspective. And it's not about the idea of telling them what to think, but in fact, empowering them on how to think and make decisions that will be advantageous and in their best interest. Parents, again, like I said before, raise their children according to their fears, what's convenient, or their outdated value systems. And oftentimes, these things clash. The value systems or the narratives associated with how parents are raising their children, they're raising their children, a 14-year-old, to prepare for what they're going to look like at 25. And a 14-year-old ain't got a clue about what it looks like to be 25. They just know about being 14. And so the key is to understand their worldview, understand the narrative that they're currently submerged in their school, in their neighborhood, among their friends, and give them tools that will help them get through that. Oftentimes, the disconnect comes from parents having this vision of what life's going to be like versus where life is for that particular child. And that's where you see a lot of rebellion, a lot of resistance, a lot of challenges manifest in the parent-child relationship. And children want freedom and fun. They want their power and control. They want to be loved. They want to belong. And, they want to feel safe. And as parents, that's our responsibility, to create those conditions that they can thrive in. They're not our property. They're human beings. And all we're here to do is cheerlead for them and encourage them along the way. That's what we got to do. I had to learn that. I didn't always know that. I had to evolve into that. I approach parenting differently today than I did with my first son. You know, and you know, it's all about a process, man. It's a process. And it's a process we often communicate about, again, so that nobody's confused about why the processes are different. Communication is critical in any relationship, y'all. You got to speak so that you're all on one accord and one page. All right, good people, I'm out, man. Y'all have a good night.